All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mark,
My name is Mark.
and this is the M&M Show, where we'll discuss our Week 8 winners, losers, wild cards, and start getting ready for Week 9. How are you feeling leading up to Week 9 here, Mark?
I'm feeling okay. Took a couple losses this past week and across my leagues, but nothing I can't weather. How about you?
Yeah, sorry to hear that your dominance is, you know, hit a speed bump at the moment, but yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I came off with 3 wins out of my 4 leagues, so not too bad. Uh, Good to see just better receiver production overall.
Yeah,
So
you're probably happy about that. I'm mildly indifferent to it, but
yeah, no doubt. Uh, did, so we made some predictions last week. I don't think we got any of them correct.
I think this is like week 4 or week 5 of me making predictions and not getting a single one right. Um, I'll lead off with the ones I got wrong since I didn't get any right. I thought 4 of the top 5 flex players would be running backs. That wasn't the case. Some tight ends broke out on the scene. James Cook and Josh Jacobs did have some good weeks. I thought Joe Mixon was going to be the number 1 running back. Have like 90 yards rushing, 40 receiving, 2 touchdowns. He had 100 yards rushing, 30 receiving, but only 1 touchdown. He was running back 6 for the week. And then I thought Tank Bigsby was going to have a really big week as well. Go off for another 80 yards, another 2 touchdowns. He had 80 yards, no touchdowns. So that kind of takes the bite out of those predictions. How about
I'll
you?
give yeah. I'll give you some credit for just being bold on that Tank Bigsby prediction, and I think you almost had it there with the Joe Mixon, pretty close. For me, yeah, no correct predictions. So all my receiver predictions, I had 4 guys listed on there, including Judy, Troy Franklin, um, a couple other guys, and Troy Franklin really disappointed me, even though the Broncos came out with the win against the Carolina Panthers. But we saw some production for Judy. We were just missing the touchdown, and he really just got overshadowed by Tillman. So crazy to see him just bursting out into the scene. And I predicted Jaden Daniels would struggle, which was maybe halfway true until he hit that, amazing Hail Mary play at the very end, which, gave him an extra boost for his overall fantasy score. So, another 20-pointer by Jaden Daniels, and he did it with 5 seconds left.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Jaden Daniels where if you just look at the box score, you see that he got a touchdown in the fourth quarter, got a comeback win against the Bears. Definitely inflated his numbers a little bit, but yeah, tough to bet against him. He's having a phenomenal rookie season.
Yep, no doubt. Let's talk about our quarterbacks then. Who is our undisputed winner here?
Yeah, I think we both only have one for this week, and that's Jalen Hurts. I have some very strong feelings about him as a Saquon Barkley owner. I'm sure you might as well, since you're in the same boat. 4 touchdowns, 3 of those rushing. I think 2 of those were just like goal line, tush push, rushing touchdowns. Really big game for him. I feel like he's getting better as the season goes on with the Eagles. But if you are a Jalen Hurts owner, you want him to come through, and he absolutely did in Week 8.
Yep, it's exactly what you wanted from Jalen Hurts. Just getting those rushing touchdowns that, make him one of those distinguishable quarterbacks, almost like a little Lamar Jackson. And I mean, he sure had the best performance out of any QB this week. I'll give a special shout out to Kirk Cousins and Brock Purdy. Purdy, just for continuing to be a consistent fantasy player, just it's literally an automatic 20 points every week, and I just love to see that. And Kirk Cousins just had a very nice game there too. I think by halftime he had already thrown for like 3 TDs, something like that. So he's one of the guys I benched in the Superflex league, and yeah, against you actually, but it didn't end up mattering. and we don't need to get into that.
Really quick on both of those guys. I mean, neither of them are wild cards. I don't think we're surprised by Brock Purdy or Kirk Cousins putting up like solid numbers, but I don't think that we expected Kirk Cousins to throw as much as he did in that game. And with Brock Purdy, like we've talked all year about the 49ers getting hit with injuries, so it's still impressive to see him put up like those 20 points on a regular basis, even with like key playmakers dropping with injuries.
Yep.
But we do have quite a few losers at the quarterback position this week. If you want to kick us off with those.
Sure thing. I'll blitz through these guys real quick. So we got Drake May hit with an injury after some nice performances the last 2 weeks, making his first starts and everything in the NFL. So it was exciting to see what he might be able to offer in the fantasy scene. Maybe ironically and maybe to his benefit, like the matchups against quarterbacks or for the quarterbacks against defenses with the Patriots, what is going to get tougher now starting this week. So I really wanted to see what Drake May had to offer against some of those better defenses. CJ Stroud, the sophomore slump continues. He loses Stephon Diggs, and you still got to wait a week before you get Nico Collins. So I believe the Texans play the Jets on Thursday night. So let's see what he's able to do there. Geno Smith, he's been a pretty good quarterback so far this year, but he came up against a tough Buffalo defense. So a measly 9 points from Geno Smith. Hate to see it. And Jordan Love, there's some injury concerns. So, I mean, he had to leave the game, but, I think he should be able to play this week. However, still, just a bit of a concern there with the injury.
Yeah, I think he's listed as questionable with a groin injury, but it's nothing significant from what I've seen.
Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned it with CJ Stroud. How much of it do you think is like him regressing this year versus just like changes to who he's passing to? I mean, Nico Collins is out on IR. Stephon Diggs is out for the year. Tank Dell is kind of having a down year compared to last year. So,
yeah, I'll say that I think defenses are able to study him a little more now that there's more tape on CJ Stroud. So, to me, it's a natural progression. I don't expect CJ Stroud to be like this for the entirety of the year, but we just haven't seen quite the turnaround at the moment. Who are your losers as quarterbacks?
I've got two. One's a rookie. The other one might as well be Caleb Williams for starters. We talked about Jaden Daniels performing well. Caleb Williams did not. Only completed 10 passes on 24 attempts for like 130 yards, no touchdowns. So you don't really salvage any fantasy value with Caleb Williams this past week. He's gotten better week over week. He's had a couple games where he's thrown over 300 yards. He's got some good pass catchers on his team. So just kind of a letdown on that front. And then the other one, I hate to say it, but it's an easy one. It's Anthony Richardson. He just got benched after going 10 for 32. You can't do that in the NFL. He had more yards than Caleb Williams with the same number of completions. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, lots of sacks. But yeah, just as much talent as he's got and the physical tools to compete in the NFL, he hasn't been able to translate that to his game this season, especially. So hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully the Colts don't just tank his development. But for fantasy purposes, you got to consider dropping him at this point.
I would agree. He was a quick drop for me in the beginning of the year, and I'm not giving myself any credit for that. It was just a concerning situation coming off those second, third games that he was playing, and I really hope he could turn it around. We'll see what Joe Flacco is able to do, and we'll see if he can even make it through the season too. There's still a lot of games to go, so maybe we'll see Richardson jump back into the quarterback position at some point.
I was half tempted to add Patrick Mahomes to this list. We've talked about it, off channel about him having more interceptions at this point in the season than touchdowns. and him not necessarily being a fantasy MVP or even a regular season real life MVP at this point. But yeah, he still salvaged some value with touchdown passes. He's still getting the ball around to Travis Kelce, to Xavier Worthy here and there. So not something you can say about Caleb Williams, for example, this past week.
I will say, Patrick Mahomes has had an interception in every game. However, he's still making these Heisman type of highlight plays, and his team's still undefeated. So if you take those things into consideration, there is a case for him for NFL MVPs so far, but the numbers don't show it.
It's wild that not him, but the Chiefs are 7-0. It's some close games, some nail biters, but yeah, it's just they haven't performed like a 7-0 team.
Agreed. Let's go to our wild cards. Who do you have there?
I only have two this week. I've got Bo Nix. I know you've been high on him. You had some bold predictions about him last week or 2 weeks ago. He's delivering on those a lot more consistently. He had almost 300 yards passing. He had 4 touchdowns this past week. For me, he's still a wild card. He's a rookie with Denver. He doesn't exactly have the best skill position players around him. So impressive to see that. I also have Jameis Winston on here. Definitely a little bit of a question mark. Definitely a wild card in his first start with Deshaun Watson out for the year. And he put up good numbers. I mean, he's a high risk, high reward kind of quarterback, but 334 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Like someone else has said this, but Deshaun Watson hasn't thrown for 200 yards at any point this season. And Jameis Winston comes in and throws for over 300. So if you have any of the Browns players, you're happy with the change.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm loving Winston as a desperate quarterback play if you're able to get him. And same with Bo Nix too. I did make a prediction 2 weeks ago that he was going to have a great game on Thursday night against the Saints 2 weeks ago. But he delivered, and the production's there fantasy wise, right? He's able to run for rushing touchdowns too, which is great. So I mean, it's not that he's a primary running quarterback. He just has that mobility. And again, I think it's just a testament to Sean Payton, and he's just able to get the most out of this Broncos squad that I wasn't even sure if we're going to see a win this year, or even see Bo Nix being the starting quarterback coming into the season. So I love to see Bo Nix, and just because of that, I'm going to move him just to the winner category. He's my improvised winner.
Improvised MVP, a little bit of a homer pick.
Yeah, I got to. I can't help myself. Kyler Murray, a solid performance versus the Miami, who's actually given up the least amount of points to QBs this year. So that was impressive in itself. We were down on Arizona Cardinals players last week, and they shut us up. So it's time for us to reevaluate a little bit the Cardinal situation. And my last wild card was Mason Rudolph, playing for the Tennessee Titans. Sure, they got blown out by the Detroit Lions, but he showed up, man. I mean, he is the new token backup quarterback. We could probably, you could probably say he's developing into that, right? Where this guy's going to have a career for the next at least 7 years, just being a backup. And this is not the last time we're going to hear from Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I don't think any of the 32 NFL teams went to start him, but yeah, definitely career backup. I could see that happening with the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray and then Marvin Harrison Jr. especially. I feel the same way about them as I do DeAndre Swift, where I keep doubting them. I'm not high on them, but they will go off for big games here and there.
Yep. They have that explosive capabilities. But hey, let's go into your domain. Let's talk some running backs. Who are your winners?
I love this section. Maybe not this week. This week was a little bit of a down week. I've got James Cook. I mentioned it earlier in the episode that he performed really well. Wasn't terribly efficient last week, but he did salvage that with rushing touchdowns, which he's getting this year. And he got last night. Josh Allen didn't take those from him like Jalen Hurts did. The other winner I've got is Devon Achane. I've got a note on here. Last week was the first time he scored more than 20 fantasy points since week 2. So he's probably happy with Tua being back and changes with the Dolphins offense. Put up 100 yards rushing, 50 yards catching, and had a receiving touchdown too. You'll love to see that if you're an A-Chain owner. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. Just a quick note on A-Chain. The Tua effect is in full display with this guy. So I have him in 3 leagues, so it was good to see him already getting that production over guys like Tyreek Hill and even to a lesser extent Jalen Waddle. As for my winners, I have Josh Jacobs and Jahmyr Gibbs, both with 127 rushing yards. And, 2 touchdowns for Jacobs, 1 touchdown for Gibbs. So these guys just ran the lights out of, the teams they were playing against. And, you can't really ask for more than 100 yards and a touchdown for, any running back that you have. So it was, good to see them produce. Let's move into our losers then. Kick us off.
I've complained about it a couple times, but Saquon Barkley is definitely one of my losers. He still put up over 10 or 11 points last week, but that's not what you expect from RB3 for the year. He had 100 yards rushing, which is good on 20 plus attempts, so averaging like 5 yards a carry. Just no touchdowns. And, at least 2 of those rushing touchdowns could have been his, didn't end up being his. I've also got 2 other kind of big name running backs. I've got Breece Hall and I've got Kenneth Walker III. Breece Hall only scored 0.2 more points than Braylon Allen, even on 5 yards a carry. And then Kenneth Walker III only got 12 rushing yards on 9 attempts. He got outscored by RB2 Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, it was crazy to see the resurgence from Braylon Allen once again. I thought they were going to use him for the rest of the year, so I happily dropped him in a few of my leagues, and you ended up just picking up the scraps. So credit there again to you, running back guru. You knew something I didn't, apparently. As for Saquon, disappointing for sure. But again, it's just a vulturing from Jalen Hurts. My losing running backs, I probably sound like a broken record right now talking about Jordan Mason, either about how much I love him or, how much he's cost me thus far. The last 3 weeks just haven't been very good for Jordan Mason owners, and even more concerning with just McCaffrey, the McCaffrey question, right? Just every week you're just getting a little closer to that, and managers just have to find a way to adapt to the situation and prepare for that. But Mason got hurt again, and so Guerendo just stepped up for the rest of the game and had an outstanding performance, 100 yards plus a touchdown. So that's why, we need that insurance. It's just that, we didn't know Guerendo wasn't getting the start from the beginning. So it wasn't one of those situations where we would have swapped Mason for Guerendo. So that was unfortunate. And Brian Robinson, 65 yards rushing, which, it's good. He was just missing a touchdown really to salvage his day a little bit. But again, the Bears defense, tough competition to come across.
I think part of the story with Jordan Mason is he started off the year on such a high note, really racking up a lot of yards, getting those rushing touchdowns, and he's had poorer games the past few weeks. I think that contributes to both of us being a little bit on edge with him. But he still has the talent. If they are trying to ease McCaffrey back in, he'll still get plenty of touches, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I would expect a committee if McCaffrey comes back. But let's hear the wild card picks then.
Yeah, I got the 2 of the 5 highest scoring running backs on here that I really didn't expect to be on here. I've got Ramondre Stevenson, very inefficient. He had 48 yards on 20 rushing attempts, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and that adds a lot to your final score. I think with Drake May being concussed, we may see more of him this week as well, or just the Patriots' run game in general to try to alleviate pressure, whether it's Jacoby Brissett under center or Drake May. The other wild card I had on here was Tyrone Tracy with the Giants. We've seen the talent. He's had some good games, but I didn't expect the volume he got. He pretty much was RB1 for the Giants. Devin Singletary didn't really see too many touches. He had 150 yards rushing and a touchdown on 20 attempts. That's really good output for running backs.
Yeah. Tracy just seems to be taking over that one spot and just leaving Singletary in the dust. My wild card picks, I'll start with Mostert. You know, even though we have Achane here as a winner, he still vultured 2 touchdowns that Achane could have had. And maybe vulture is not the right word in this case because Mostert is that Monty type where they're just going to give him the ball in the red zone near the goal line and have him go in there. But, you know, owning Achane in 3 of my teams, I want him to get these sort of quote-unquote easy touchdowns. And he did. I was playing a Mostert owner, which cost me my only loss in my fantasy leagues, right? So that adds a little more to the pain. Talking about you, Daniel Martinez. And my next out-of-nowhere pick was Najee Harris. You know, whenever you see this guy running the ball in the open field, he looks super intimidating with his, you know, his hair just like moving side to side like that. And it's he looks like a load to handle, but it's good to see that he's kind of having a bit of a renaissance these last couple weeks. So Pittsburgh, you know, continuing to use the running backs to their advantage.
Yeah, with Najee, he's been a lot more efficient this year than he has been compared to last year. I still wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket with Jalen Warren getting healthier and with a more established quarterback under center. So we'll see if he can still put up games like the one last week. But yeah, he had a good showing.
Yep. Great. So this is probably the best section of the video. Just kidding. But yeah, let's talk some winning receivers. So lead us off, Mark. Who are your winners?
You sure you don't want to lead us off with your favorite section?
All right, I'll give it a go. The first one's really easy. This is the undisputed winner, I'll have to say. So CeeDee Lamb, just a monster game, nearly 350 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. And, you know, a game the Cowboys could have tied if they hadn't been wasteful with, you know, just the last possession they had. They had plenty of time. They scored in under a minute to bring the game down to 1 score. And, you know, we could have seen maybe a third 50-yard and an extra 50 yards for CeeDee Lamb, just adding on to that monster game. But, you know, I guess you'll take the 38 points that he gave you. And my next winner is Devonta Smith. So bounce back game for him. Love to see it. Jalen Hurts, instead of throwing to A.J. Brown, he threw a bomb to Smitty. And, yeah, I was just very, very happy to see him get his. And, you know, the matchups for the Eagles are looking good moving forward. So, you know, he's definitely going to be a player that I'm going to look to start week in and week out.
As an A.J. Brown owner, I was in shambles when Devontae Smith got that, but it is what it is. They're both incredibly talented, and they've got a really good offense in Philly. Yeah, I have two receivers on here that I was really impressed with. One was Marvin Harrison Jr. He didn't especially get more targets than usual, only got 7, but he converted that into 6 catches, 100+ yards, and a touchdown. Really good to see for him, for someone who's kind of had some rougher games in the past few weeks. Other guy I have on here is Calvin Ridley. He's probably happy with DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to the Chiefs. He had 15 targets, translated that to 10 catches and 140 yards receiving. By far his best game of the season. So he's looking like receiver 1 for the Titans. Maybe not receiver 1 in fantasy football, but definitely on that team.
I think I have a little more confidence starting Marvin Harrison Jr. now moving forward. I just needed to see something from him first, and the fact that, again, he did it against Miami, who, give up the least amount of points to quarterbacks and, have a pretty solid defense. That gives me more confidence in him. And I don't know if it's definitely not justified the second round value that the community put on him going into the season, but it's still, it shows the potential, right? And yeah, monster game from Calvin Ridley. Just, I didn't know he still had it in him.
He has someone other than Will Levis throwing him the ball. It kind of feels like with the Browns receivers, they finally have a half decent quarterback getting them the ball.
Right. Mason Rudolph. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk losing receivers. Now lead us off with your losers.
Yeah, we've got some overlap here. So I won't go too into it, but Amon-Ra, he got a touchdown with the Lions on 2 catches. He caught both of his targets. That's kind of a problem, though, when you only have 2 targets and only 7 yards receiving. Not something you want from someone you probably took in the first round of the draft. Other big receivers that had really poor showings, Drake London. He only had 4 catches for 34 yards, no touchdown. DJ Moore with the Bears, 2 catches for 27 yards. Again, we talked about Caleb Williams only completing 10 passes, so a fifth of all completions went to DJ Moore. Still really rough for those receiver ones on their respective teams.
Yep. I was expecting a bigger week from DJ Moore. The matchup seemed good against the Commanders, but it seems like they just had a little extra chip on their shoulders, like, having the 2 Heisman quarterback winners going up against each other. So, yeah, again, just I agree with you. It's more of a Caleb Williams struggle than a DJ Moore issue. I had London as well, and Amon-Ra included, and yeah, Stephon Diggs just added to that one with the season-ending injury.
Yeah, that's tough to see. You never want someone to perform poorly, but especially get injured. Yeah, they have no real control over that. So sucks if you're a Stephon Diggs owner, and sucks if you're Diggs himself.
Yep. Sweet. As for the wild card receivers, I have Cedric Tillman here. So he's seen an 80% of snaps in the last 2 games. And in both of those games, he's seen 80+ yards receiving. So yeah, I mean, those are just great stats to hear. And last week he just really exploded. So if you pick this guy up last week, I think you have a real good weapon here. Definitely for the flex play, right? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he can do moving forward to the season.
I like the little advanced metric there. I thought this was a vibes-based podcast, but yeah. Snap count percentage. Okay.
We have to, be the masters of our domain. So I'm trying to not let any receiver slide from my site as best as possible. And Tillman did that. But great. Yeah. Who do you have there as a wild card?
I see one on here that we both had, Ladd McConkey with the Chargers, rookie on a run first offense, but had a monster game. He finished as receiver 2 for the week. Perfect 6 catches, 6 targets, over 100 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. Really good game for him. Not something I'd expect every week. He has the talent, but yeah, really made the most of those opportunities.
Yeah.
And then yeah,
Mhm.
go for it.
Yeah, quick note on McConkey. It seems like, the Chargers are starting to throw just a bit more than what they did in the regular season. Herbert's looking better. And, if you haven't seen the McConkey touchdowns from this past weekend, please watch them. And I think they were both like very consecutively scored. So maybe in just like the period of one quarter. But the second touchdown is just remarkable how he pulled off that catch. One-on-one contest, and the defender's right on him too. He just he was just a little better on the day, we'll say that.
Yeah, body control for sure.
Yep.
You love to see that with contested catches. Some guys like DK Metcalf are just bigger than other players and can beat a quarterback that way. Ladd McConkey is not like that. So yeah, good catches for him. The other wild card wide receiver I've got on here is Josh Downs. He got 2 really big passes from Anthony Richardson when Anthony Richardson was actually connecting on passes. Finished with 100 yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. I don't know how consistent that type of performance will be with Joe Flacco under center, but for last week, that was really good for him.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen his name come up a couple times here now. So I'm really liking the confidence to play Josh Downs if I do need that flex receiver too. But there is some competition there in the Indianapolis receiving core. However, I do hope that Josh Downs is kind of distinguishing himself a little bit from those other guys. But, we'll see. Maybe Michael Pittman has something to say about that next week.
Or they just force feed Jonathan Taylor the ball for 30 touches. Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows?
Or bring in, Richardson for a vulture touchdown, right? Awesome. So, do you know what? I know last week was week 8, but do you know what else it was too?
I think I know, and I think I found out a little too late to make any appropriate bets on it or to adjust my lineup accordingly. What week was it last week?
They literally didn't tell us until you started watching football at the first slate of games. But yeah, it was a National Tight End Week according to George Kittle. So let's remember that one for next year. Week 8, National Tight End Week. So it just seemed like every tight end, every starting tight end came to play this week and gave you some sort of production. So one of them being Kyle Pitts, his first 2 touchdown game in his career, and surprisingly, 48% of snap participation in this game. So, and that's a season low. My next winner is Zach Ertz. This guy's still hanging around the league, so I wanted to give him a shout out. But in the last 3 games, if you're playing PPR, he's giving you 10 plus points. So Commanders are definitely using Zach Ertz to the best of his abilities.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the biggest storyline from last week is just the tight ends finally putting up numbers. The one that stood out to me was Cade Otton with the Bucks. With Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out, he was the highest scoring tight end this past week. I think we expected him to get more targets, be a little bit more involved, but I didn't expect him to be as good as he was this past week. So that was my one big winner for tight ends. I do have 2 losers on here. One being Brock Bowers. It's tough to knock the guy, the rookie, when he caught every single pass, all 5 passes for 58 yards. But he finished as tight end number 18 in half PPR formats. For someone that we think is, a top 3, maybe top 1 tight end on the season, that's a rough week, especially on, national tight end week. But, it could be he's a rookie. He's still figuring it out. Next year, week 8, he's going to put up some bonkers numbers. We'll see.
Yep. He's just got to take a few notes from George Kittle and I guess Kyle Pitts, whatever he ate for breakfast that day.
Tight end university. That's where we got to go.
Yeah, I also, I see here that we both have Cole Kmet too. So, yeah, we talked about the Bears, how abysmal their passing game was. So clearly affecting Cole Kmet, who's had some monster games throughout the season. But, that's just part of the tight end fluctuation. And if you have Kmet in your lineup, that's just what you have to live with. So just unfortunate it didn't pay off this week.
Yeah, I mean, 1 catch for 14 yards is tough to see when other tight ends are going off for 2 touchdowns, but you live with it.
Yeah. Great. So our wildcard tight ends, I have Sam Laporta, surprisingly, just because it's been such a down year for Sam Laporta. I was starting to doubt the guy. Of course, he was capable of it after having a great year last year. And more recently, he's been seeing, some touchdowns here and there, some more targeting. But this week, he's really showing that he's coming back to life. So there's still some hope for Sam Laporta the rest of the season. And we probably will see some better production from him, I would expect.
Yeah, my only wild card tight end this past week was Adam Troutman. You know who that is?
I don't.
He's Denver Broncos. Yours truly. He caught all 4 passes, 85 yards, and a touchdown. I feel like every week we have a running back or a tight end or a receiver. You and I don't know which team they're on or where they are on the depth chart, but he put up some big numbers this past week.
Yeah, you know what? I remember him now. I'm serious. I remember him.
Your Broncos loyalty is coming into question.
Just don't let anyone know. Yeah. So that'll do it for our winners, losers, and wildcard picks. So are there any trade targets, any players that you're looking to get on your team this week?
Yeah, we could do some quick hits. Last week we were at the mid-season mark, so the playoffs are fast approaching. We're kind of starting to look at schedules at the back half. 2 guys I think people ought to really try to pick up. One is Alvin Kamara. Obviously, he's had a little bit of a renaissance year so far. He's had some big games. Derek Carr is back and playing, which will help the Saints' run game. They're down a passer and pass catcher and Rashid Shaheed. Taysom Hill's dealt with injuries, so he's got potential. And the back half of the schedule, they play the New York Giants, Washington Commanders, and then Packers weeks 14, 15, 16, when a lot of folks are in the playoffs. That figures to not be the most difficult of stretches. Maybe it's not great for running backs, but it's definitely not atrocious. The other guy I have on here is Brian Thomas Jr. He's injured right now. He might miss 1 week. I think they did an MRI and it came back clean. It's not as bad as they expected, but the Jacksonville Jaguars have been hit with injuries with Gabe Davis and then Christian Kirk. Brian Thomas Jr. will be receiver 1 with Trevor Lawrence throwing him the ball in a lot of games where the Jags will probably be playing from behind. They play the Tennessee Titans, Jets, and then Raiders weeks 14, 15, 16. So probably worth trying to finagle him from other owners, throw him in as receiver 3, flex play, and that should pay off.
There's one thing that I regret not having this year is a little more Brian Thomas Jr. on my team. So yeah, just a tremendous fantasy producing receiver so far, and I mean, he seems to be a touchdown monster also.
Who do you have?
Yeah. Yeah, for my trade targets, I have two picks that are maybe a little more wishful thinking because I don't think anyone's going to sell on these guys low, but there might be some panic around Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London. So, you know, Amon-Ra being a just a first round pick for most leagues, he's had some questionable games where it's like, Lions are just dominating, they're running, they're scoring in different ways where Amon-Ra just doesn't see the ball. So there's some question marks for me there. And I would love to try to capitalize on Drake London this week just because he came off a real dud last week. So you really just have to gauge where people's confidence level is with the Atlanta Falcons. And I think Drake London is my top target, but I also really like Jayden Reed, just having a couple slow weeks the last 2 weeks. And, if you just add on to the Love injury concerns, you might be getting some pretty good value here, especially if you need a guy or just a receiver to count on towards the end of the season. This is one of the guys I want on my team for the, just late season playoff push and ultimate, fantasy glory.
I think with a lot of these like higher upside talented players too, when you're trying to trade for them, if you are, don't be overzealous with it. Definitely try to play into their fantasy owners' fears or concerns about down weeks. Like Drake London, if you are like, oh, I really want this receiver, the other fantasy owner might, buckle up and hold on to Drake London for all he's worth. But if you are like, oh, maybe, he's had some bad weeks, you might be able to get in their heads a little bit better.
Yep. So definitely worth taking stabs at and seeing how you can improve your team with some of these guys that we mentioned. But what are some of your bold picks going into week 9?
Closing out with the bold predictions we always get wrong. I've got 3. I've got Tyler Algier scoring more fantasy points than Bijan Robinson. They're playing Dallas, which has been one of the worst run defenders. If the game gets out of hand, I could just see them feeding Tyler Algier the ball and running the clock out. I think Justin Jefferson has a comeback game after last week. I think he goes off for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Colts, kind of like CeeDee Lamb this past week. Maybe he doesn't get 17 targets, but I do think he'll have a monster game against the Colts. And my last bold prediction, a little bit of a riff on Jalen Hurts, but I think Saquon Barkley gets more rushing touchdowns than Jalen Hurts. We'll see.
Yeah, I sure hope for your sakes, since you have more Saquon investments than me. Absolutely love the Tyler Algier prediction, super bold, and that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for, at least from a bold prediction. I don't think I have anything quite as bold as Algier, but I'm going with a bounce back game for Caleb Williams, 300 yards passing, 2 TDs, 2 throwing TDs, 1 rushing TD. And along with that, DJ Moore for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. Yes, that's 95 yards precisely.
Okay.
And my number 1 trade target, Drake London, going off for 2 touchdowns and 70 yards receiving.
So the 2 receivers we thought were losers this past week, you've got bold predictions for, high expectations. I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
I think one of those will hit. It's 50-50,
Cool.
right?
We'll see if any of them hit, but I'm not holding my breath.
Sounds good. Well, that'll conclude our episode for our Week 8 review. I hope everyone has the best of luck for Week of 9. And, let's try to get some wins out here. It's getting close to the playoffs, so the wins matter more than ever.
Yes, sir. Well, we'll see you next week for our winners, losers, and wild cards again.
Till next time.
Until then, bye.